Okay, so this week we have three main tasks. You'll notice the first half or so of the items in this week's module are on plagiarism, and it's mainly just important to understand plagiarism because we don't want to, first of all, accidentally plagiarize, and second of all, we want to be aware of what it is so that we can avoid it. So a lot of these items in this module tell you what it is and then kind of quiz you on that. So you have two smaller quizzes. You want to be sure to take both of those, and this is English 111. Then there's a small video on in-text citations. You'll notice that this video is one that's from Purdue OWL. It's not one that I put on here. The reason I chose to use theirs is because it was very concise. It stated what needed to be said, and I thought that would be appreciated, especially if it's something you have to go back. I also like that they had the text on the screen, so if you're like me and kind of mute a video sometimes and watch it, that might be a little bit easier for you. The next item that's on here is the in-text citations worksheet. Now with this one, what I did is I went ahead and filled it out for you, so it's more of a note sheet on what in-text citations are and how to do them. And I tried to put this in a couple of different places. So you have the video on it, and then you've got the note sheet. In addition, you do have your textbook. This is noted in the agenda, but really the page you want to look at in your textbook is 474 and up for how to do those in-text citations. After that, you have some notes on quoting and paraphrasing. That's explained a little bit more on this sheet, and I'll kind of go over it in just a sec too. But essentially, when you quote, you're using a source's exact words, and when you paraphrase, you're getting their ideas and putting them in your own words. And just as a side note, you'll see this in a couple of different places. You'll always want to cite, you always want to give credit when you quote and when you paraphrase, not just when you quote. I also have some notes on how to structure your report and some sample introductions for a report. And I'm going to go over this in a little bit more detail, so that's why I'm going a little more quickly. I also have a sample beginning of an essay. If you're like me, I like to see an example. And then your rough draft, which is 2 pages, should be submitted on Canvas. Now, just like with our narrative rough draft, it's a low-stakes assignment. So if you submit your rough draft, and that has to have the works cited page with it, so a 2-page rough draft plus the works cited page. If you submit all of that and you meet the length requirement, you have your works cited page on there, you're going to get those 10 points. The reason I ask you to submit all of that is so I can add in that extra layer of feedback. So again, it's low stakes. You're going to get your 10 points if you do what you need to do, but it allows me the opportunity to look over it, and if there are any major issues that I see, I can point them out now instead of when the assignment is a 150-point assignment, okay? So just to kind of back up a little bit, most of the plagiarism information is more self-explanatory, so I'll kind of let you work your way through that. Most of you all have heard of plagiarism and are familiar at least with the concept, so you can work your way through there. Where I really want to give you a little extra and give some opportunity for questions is on the in-text citations. So here's where I'll open it up and provide a little bit more information, and you can ask any questions if you have them. And if as you're working, you need to email me to, just ask, am I doing this right? Feel free to do that too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share a different screen, and I'm just going to go onto a blank Word document. And again, I'm recording this, so I'll post it on Canvas for you. But if you need to jot down notes too as well, you can. So you're going to see in your notes for this week that an in-text citation is a reference in the body of the essay to one of the sources on your works cited page. Now, in the video lecture from last week, you heard this reference. So whenever you give credit in an essay, you have to do so in 2 ways. The first way you do that, or one way you do that, is on the works cited page. That's where you have that expanded information about the source, the publication information, etc. The in-text citation, though, is the other part of that. Now, the thing to remember is that where you have one, you have to have the other. So if you have an in-text citation, it needs to match a works cited entry. If you've got a works cited entry, it needs to have something that is referenced in the body of the essay that correlates to that. So you include an in-text citation when you quote or paraphrase. And also, when you use something, or when you include information, I should say, that is not common knowledge. Okay, and I'll show examples and kind of back up on this. I just want to give the bird's eye view first. So the purpose of an in-text citation is if, say I've written an essay, and in that essay I include a quote. So I say, according to so-and-so, comma, quote, and that information. Right after that quotation, I'm going to include an in-text citation. And if you want a really good example of how these look in an essay, you can turn to page 506 in your textbook. There's a really good sample MLA essay there. But if after that quotation, my reader sees the in-text citation, what that in-text citation is going to have in it is shortened information about that source. So it may have the author and the page number. So it may say Adams 4 within it. And again, I'll show you how to format these in a second. But what my reader is going to be able to do is say, okay, it's Adams. They're going to be able to flip back to my works cited page, find Adams on that works cited page, and that should be pretty easy to find because it'll be sticking out because of that hanging indentation. That way, if that reader wants to look up that Adams source, they can from the works cited entry. So it's kind of like if you've ever read something with footnotes, you've got the little one in the text that corresponds to more information down below. The in-text citation performs a similar function. It's a little signal in the text that refers to more information about that source on the works cited page in case someone wants to look that source up, okay? So the big question here, first of all, is when to use them. Like we said, we use them whenever we quote or paraphrase. And again, you'll see this in your notes, but just to reiterate, a quotation is when you use a source's exact words, okay? And with that, you want to put quote marks around them, okay? And also include a citation, like I said. So for example, and you're going to see me show you how to do the in-text citations in just a second, but just as an overview, a quotation would look something like this. According to a source, comma, quote, there are 6 types of spring water. I'm totally making that up. 6, okay? So within this part right here is your in-text citation. The period goes after it, and you're going to see me emphasize that a little bit more later on. This is the quotation. So the quotation, I'm just going to highlight again. That information would have appeared exactly like that in the original source. So the words would have been exactly the same. So that's what a quotation will look like in your essay. You also include an in-text citation, as I said earlier, when you paraphrase. That is, when you put a portion of text from a source into your own words. Now, these do not need quotation marks. But still need a citation. So for instance, a paraphrase may look something like this. And I'm going to say according to a source here, I wouldn't have to. I'm just doing it to kind of show the difference between these two. Many types of water are present in spring, or in the United States. Okay, so I can tell that this is a paraphrase, first of all, because there are no quote marks around it. So I'm pretty much telling my audience, hey, these are my words. They're not the sources. But I still have my citation. And the citation will go either at the end of the sentence or at the end of, or before the next major piece of punctuation. So if there had been a comma here and the sentence went on, my citation would have still been there. Otherwise, it would have gone at just the total end of the sentence. Again, notice that I did not include quotation marks there. Now, the last time that you would cite is when you include information that isn't common knowledge. And to me, that's the trickiest one. But basically, if what you're including in the essay is something that most people would not know, you need to give credit to it. So, for instance, if I'm writing an essay and if I say that Columbus set sail in 1492, I don't need to cite that. That's something most people know. But if I discuss within my essay the types of foods that Columbus ate, or if I discuss, say, a more specific aspect of a better known topic that most people wouldn't know about, I would need to give credit for that. And the reason for that is I need to prove that what I'm saying is true to substantiate it. And that's where in choosing a report topic, I kind of cautioned you against something you knew 100% about, because if you already know something and you include it in your essay, but that something is not common knowledge, what you have to do is double back and find a source that says it and cite it from that source. And it's okay to do that, but sometimes it can be easy to forget to do that. So anything that's not common knowledge, you need to cite. And you would have to, you could either quote or paraphrase there, as long as you're providing where you got that information from, okay, or another source that states that. Before we go on, are there any questions on when to use a citation before we get into how to do one? Okay, so now we will get into how to do one. And for that, what I'm going to actually do is pull up from Canvas the in-text citation build-out worksheet document. So I'm just going to open that from here. As far as how to do them as well, you can use the video within this module or start on page 474 in your textbook. This is just kind of a condensed down version in this note sheet. So this part up here I've already gone over, but this table is what I wanted to direct you to. I like to kind of format or have something like this handy in formatting MLA citations, because I think your textbook does a great job of showing how to do them. But looking at that quick table is a little bit easier than having to go through a few pages of how to cite within your textbook. So this is more of a quick reference guide. So when you're doing in-text citations, what you need to do, first of all, is figure out what information you have about the source. Typically, your in-text citations, and it says this in this video, in the video too, for the week, your in-text citations will match what comes first in the works cited entry. So if the author's last name came first in the works cited entry, it'll be the author in there. If there was no author and the title came first, it'll be the title in there. And in either of those two cases, whether it was author or title, you include the page number if you have it, but you don't include it if you don't have it. And that's really the quickest way to sum up MLA in-text citations. And that's essentially what this table is telling you. So when creating in-text citations, what I like to do is have my works cited page handy and kind of look at it. And I go ahead and jot down how to do my in-text citations before I begin writing my essay, because if as you're writing your essay you include a quote, but then you have to dig out your notes and figure out, oh gosh, how do I do this citation, it makes a lot more work than if you just go ahead and have it handy. So I would go ahead and figure out how to do them before you begin writing. So if you pull out your works cited page and say your first source starts with Jones, Janet, and it's a book and it has page numbers, it's a physical book, or it's an e-book as a PDF that has page numbers at the bottom. That source has an author and page, so that's the preferred citation. So if that's the case, my citation would be the author's last name and the page number. And the page number I'm talking about here is the page on which you found the quote or information you're paraphrasing, okay? So there, if I'm quoting something that was on page 2 of Mill's source, my citation would be Mill's 2 at the end of the sentence or before the next major piece of punctuation. And then the rest of it kind of follows a pattern, and you'll notice that. So if I have an author, but that source does not have a page number, all that's going to be in that citation is the author's last name. Now, it says it right here. Websites do not have page numbers. So if I was just on nationalgeographic.com that source doesn't have page numbers. So even if I printed it out and it said like page 2 of 3, I still don't want to use those because depending on my computer or printer settings, my page 2 could be your page 3, so it's not entirely accurate. What does have page numbers are things like books and any PDF file. Some of them will have page numbers. Again, websites won't. Of course, videos and things like that won't either. The next thing, let's say my source does not have an author. So the first thing in that citation is the title, and the title of my work is The Common Cold. We'll say that's my topic. If that's the case, my citation is going to be the title and the page number. Notice here the title is in quotation marks, but if on my works cited entry, the first thing in that works cited entry was a title that was in italics, the title would be in italics on here because it needs to match. So I've got my title and the page number. Notice I don't have a comma in between or PG or anything like that. And also, this is written below, but if you have a title right here in your in-text citation that's more than 3 words, you need to shorten it to the first 3. So if you have a title that's like 15 words long, shorten it to the first 3 words. Because again, the purpose of an in-text citation is to be a signal to a work on your works cited page, and those 3 words are enough to provide a signal. And if it has no author and no page number, the only thing in there is the title. And those are the 4 ways to do your MLA citations. Now, there are some different cases, but this is going to take care of you 98% of the time. So page 474 up in your textbook is where you'll want to look. So let's say page 475, if you have 2 or more works by the same author, it shows you how to deal with that. So if you ever have something that seems like an exception, check your textbook. And you can check your textbook otherwise as well, but make doubly sure too there. Any questions on how to do the in-text citations? Okay. If not, here are a couple of examples. So what I was talking about here is your in-text citation will always match what comes first. So the citation for the first source, if we're looking at this one, I do have an author, and this is the process I go through. So first of all, I kind of look at what's first, right? Because that's what your in-text citation is going to match. So look at my citation, and I ask myself, okay, do I have an author? The answer is yes. So that author's last name is going to be in the citation. Then do I have a page number? This one is just a website, so no, I don't. So it's going to be right here, author and no page number. So my citation is just going to be that author's last name. Same thing down here. Do I have an author? The answer is no, because if I had an author, it would be first. The second one is, do I have page numbers? And the answer is yes, because I've got a page range listed in there. So my citation is going to be right here, because I have no author, but I do have page numbers. So it's going to be that title shortened to the first 3 words and the page number. So it's going to be, like down here, cyber working or, and then the page on which I found the quote or paraphrase. Now that one I just kind of guessed and put a 289, but if I were actually including it, I would put the page that I found the information. Now down here are the different ways you can actually include them in your essay. So really the first 3 kind of show you what you need, but I gave more information than you probably needed. So whenever you have a quote, you do want to use some sort of a signal phrase. You can either use a general one, like according to a source, or you can use the author's last name if you have it. Make sure not to refer to an author by their first name. So here I've got according to a source and then comma quote. So whenever you incorporate a quotation, what you want to do is have a signal phrase, then it'll be comma quote, and I capitalize the first word of my quotation. Then I have my citation, and the period goes after the citation, not before it. Now, if I had a source that I want to introduce with the author's name, and that source does not have page numbers, this is how that would look. So I'm introducing with the author's name, Rogers writes. There's no page number, so I wouldn't put it at the end. Now, I would not have to put Rogers again at the end because I introduced with that author's name. And again, the reason there's no page number is because the source didn't have them. And the other situation you may run into is if you want to introduce with the author's name and that source does have page numbers, you'll notice the only information at the citation at the end is the page number because I don't need Rogers here and here. Now, what you have down below that is essentially a duplicate of what's above, only with paraphrases, okay? And here are some suggestions. Remember, your in-text citations should match your works cited entries. So whenever I grade the essays, what I do is if I see an in-text citation, as soon as I see it, I scroll down to the works cited entry and make sure it's on there correctly. If the in-text citation doesn't match the works cited entry, you don't get credit for using that source because I need to very easily be able to correlate them. Any reader would need to be able to do that. That being said, I suggest figuring out how to do the in-text citation as soon as you do the works cited entry or as soon as you have the works cited page done. And again, that helps because you don't have to go back and forth with your notes so much. So that is how to do in-text citations. And I will say, I feel like in-text citations can often be very intimidating, but they're very easy to format because, again, you have one of those three methods. The big thing I'll note here is cite as you go. Do not write your whole paper and put your quotes and paraphrases in and then be like, well, I'll put my citations in when I'm done. If you do that, first of all, it's harder. Second of all, you open yourself up to accidental plagiarism because you could forget to cite something. So if you go ahead and put in a quote, go ahead and just plop in your in-text citation while you've got it, while you've got that source open and available and you're looking at it, okay? And that's going to save a lot of trouble. Any questions on in-text citations and how to incorporate them? Okay. The last thing we'll talk about is report structure. So I'm going to flip back to these lecture notes. Okay, so on here, and I'm not going to repeat a lot of it since most of the information is already on here. Introductions, I would say, are kind of quote-unquote shaped like a piece of pizza, meaning they start out broad and they go specific. And the reason that you want to do that is because you want to draw your reader in. If you start out with what's called your thesis statement, and the thesis statement is one sentence that tells what your whole essay is about, what happens is you start your essay so specifically that in your introduction you don't have anywhere else to go. So that's why you want to structure your essay introduction this way. So the first thing you want is some sort of a hook. So you can begin in a number of different ways. Sometimes you can begin with a broad statement. So if I'm writing about the common cold, I may say many people have had the common cold or know somebody who has had it. I could begin with a shocking statistic such as, according to research, 99% of people have had the common cold. Of course, I would have to cite that because it's not common knowledge. I could begin with a pertinent quotation, or I could begin with an anecdote. And what an anecdote is a really, really short, pertinent story. So if I'm writing about the common cold and I have a particularly interesting story about something that happened to me relating to that, I could include it. The thing is, I want to make sure to show how that anecdote is pertinent, and I don't want it to be too long. Again, it shouldn't be any more than 2-3 sentences. If it's more than that, it kind of takes over. The next thing I'll focus on, I'm going to scroll down and then back. The last sentence of your introduction should be your thesis statement. So again, this is the one sentence in your essay that tells what you're writing about. For your rough draft, it's fine if you use a tentative thesis statement, like in this essay, I will. But make sure before you turn in your final draft that you take first person out of it. Sometimes people like to start off with a really simple one because it makes life easier. So for the common cold, a thesis statement may be something like, there are many symptoms and treatments associated with a common cold. That would be a good thesis statement because it tells my audience I'm talking about the symptoms and the treatment. Okay? And the reason I went down to the thesis statement is because the middle part bridges the gap between the two. Sometimes I would recommend having your thesis statement in mind before you even begin writing the introduction so you know what you're easing down into. So in the middle, between the hook and the thesis statement, you'll want to start touching upon the main issues that are examined in the essay. So you've got an example here with World War II and the Dresden bombings with the common cold, and you have some examples on this. If I had an anecdote, I may want to start touching upon the ideas of symptoms and treatments and the commonalities of them. I would not suggest in your introduction using too many outside sources. If you do use an outside source, I would really just use it with a quote or a shocking statistic, because if you put too much cited outside information in your introduction, what it does is it kind of steals from your body paragraphs, and it makes it harder to write those. So I try to keep most of an introduction common knowledge, touch upon key ideas without getting too into the weeds. So down here, you've got sample introductions that begin with each of the following hooks. So I won't read these since you can go back and look at them, but they can provide a really good example to you. Again, the big thing is end your introduction with the thesis. Don't begin with the thesis. So when you're writing, what I would recommend doing is you've got your works cited page. So from here, sit down with your works cited page and figure out tentatively how to do those in-text citations. After you do that, write your introduction. And then after your introduction, you will want to create your topic sentences. And a topic sentence is the first page of each body paragraph. And as it says, you can read pages 52 to 56 to help you determine the organization that works best. So what you want to do is, at this point, you've read over all of your sources for your essay. Just ask yourself, what are 2 to 4 aspects of my topic that I want to talk about? So if I'm writing about the common cold, I may want to talk about symptoms and treatments. So I'm going to have a body paragraph on symptoms, body paragraph on treatments. Most of you have been taught that you have to have 3 body paragraphs, but you could have 2, you could have 4. Can't just have 1, but you can have 2 or more, okay? So break down your topic in a way that fits the sources you have. So if I'm doing a historical event, most of the time the best way to break that down is before, during, after. So I would have a body paragraph on before the event, a body paragraph on during, body paragraph on after. So when I'm creating a topic sentence on that, a topic sentence is a very general sentence. It is not a quote or paraphrase. So if I'm writing about the Dresden bombings, as I have an example here, I may say there were many events that precipitated the Dresden bombings. And then my during could be something like the Dresden bombings were incredibly tumultuous or something like that. And then after could be there are many effects of the Dresden bombings in World War II. So again, keep your topic sentences simple. But what you can do is by writing out your introduction and then going ahead and under your introduction writing out all of your topic sentences, you're giving your information a place to go. So know what your topic sentences are and write them before you write the body of those body paragraphs. Because what can happen is if you don't have a place for things to go, an essay can become very, very quickly disorganized, okay? Especially if you're using outside sources. Because if I'm going through my sources and I find something on after the Dresden bombings, what I'm able to do is if I have my topic sentences created and typed out, I just move my cursor down to my after paragraph and type my quote or paraphrase and I'm good. Whereas if I didn't have those already created, I would be tempted to put them where they didn't go. So here you have some notes on topic sentences. Make sure to read those carefully, and you've got some examples here. But again, you want to ask yourself what you want to cover in your essay and how you can break it up effectively. Okay? And then again, you've got some other examples there as well. Any questions? Okay, so after you've created your in-text citations, after you've created your topic sentence, or after you've created your in-text citations, after you've done your introduction and your topic sentences, all you have to do from there is flesh out your body paragraphs. And the way you do that is by including information from your outside sources. You will notice with a report that pretty much everything in your body paragraphs is cited, and that is okay. That's what we want, because your report is an informational essay. So you're telling what sources say about a topic. So if you have a report and in your body paragraph you only have 1 citation, that's really bad. So what you need to do is, if say I have a body paragraph on symptoms of the common cold, all I need to do is have my sources in front of me and pull out all the information on symptoms and put it in there, cite as I go, and then I should come up with a good body paragraph. And here, in beginning of an essay, I've got an example of that. So here's my introduction, and under that, I've written out my 2 topic sentences. And then what you do is after that, you start finding pertinent information. So, for instance, this body paragraph is on symptoms. So what I would do is after I wrote out my topic sentence, I would get out all my sources and say, okay, what all do I have on symptoms? And I'm start plopping in my information. And when you put it in, you want to make sure you're doing it in a way that makes sense. You know, you don't want to come out of left field. You want to provide context for all of your information. But if you do that, then this part of the essay is quite easy, especially if you are citing as you go. So my topic sentence is, there are many symptoms that those suffering with the common cold encounter. So let's say I dig through my sources and I find this quote on the this piece of information on the common cold. It says there are 52 symptoms of the common cold. I go ahead and put that in there with my citation. And notice how I'm going from broad to specific here too. The two symptoms that people struggle with the most are sneezing and coughing. However, other people struggle with a runny nose. Those who have a runny nose get over the cold faster, and then I cite that there as well. The thing with information is, if you quote, you always have to put a citation right after it. But if I have two sentences in a row that I paraphrase from the same source that are from the same page, if it has page numbers, I can just cite at the end of those two, okay? So that's kind of how I would begin that essay. Again, you just put in the information as you see fit. And you'll find, as you go through your sources and just put information where it goes, your essay kind of creates itself. And that's why I really emphasize good organization early on, knowing your topic sentences, having those thought out before you start composing, because if you do that, again, it's just a matter of organizing, you know, putting quotes and paraphrases in the paragraphs they belong in. Okay? Any questions? Okay, so in this class, in English 111, what you want to make sure to do is take your 2 plagiarism mini quizzes and also submit the rough draft of your essay here. Again, make sure that's 2 pages plus a works cited page, and they should all be on the same document. Any questions?